Hello, future toppers. My name is Santosh Gupta, and you must be preparing for now Prelims 2023. And today I am here with you, the most important topic for the Prelims. And this is from the Polity, the most basic fundamental concepts that need to be covered to get 6 to 8 up to 10 marks in prelims, especially in the polity, and this will give you an extra edge to get up to 120 plus in marks in the polity. So let me start with which are these topics. So first, polity, if you analyze the previous year's papers, so there are four clear patterns. Polity fundamental aspects topics. There will be get 3 to 4 questions. Then polity and constitution related 6 to 8 questions. This is more or less from NCRT or Lakshmikant, you can say. Then current affair related questions, 2 to 4 questions. Then in recent year there are 1 to 2 questions from governance sector. But here today my focus will be on the first part, that is the most fundamental topics, and 3 4 questions are definitely, and you will not find all of these topics together in any book, but I have tried to cover it here in the video and as much as we can. First, let me introduce you what are those topics. So if you see, there will be every year some question like democracy, liberty, equality, constitutionalism, rights kya hai, parliamentary versus presidential, and this requires you to have most fundamental understanding. This is not about political science topics. Normally people think that you have to study the some basic stuff about the fundamental aspect of the political science syllabus. So this is not so. You have to understand this in the context of our polity syllabus. So there you have to need basic but robust understanding upon the this concept and how you can use the concept in solving the most question from polity. Correct. अब है कि ये सारे टॉपिक्स है. नाउ I have gathered 22 topics in which I have prepared the content. I'm going to discuss first 1/3 of the topics today. And if you register on the link that is given below in the description, I will share you the PDF of all the topics that is covered in a proper way in the detail, and that will be most useful for the prelims, and you don't have to go here and there covering these topics. Now I am going to cover some of the topics. Stay with me till the last so that you get an understanding properly, and when you read the topics on your own, then you might be able to understand it. So first is related to democracy and republic. Now everybody know, by the people, for the people, of the people. Now this is democracy. This is one of the characteristic of the democracy that was propounded in America. But these are not democracy where here in the world during ancient Romans and Greek and even in ancient India. So what is the fundamental meaning of democracy? Then same is the republic. There were Rome republics. There were Jana in ancient India. So which what were the Basali republic was about? So what is actually mean by the republic, and what are the basic difference by in between two? India is a democracy also. India is a republic also. So let's understand each, and then we'll differentiate between two and also solve some of the questions that have been asked and they may be asked. So डेमोक्रेसी का फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट मीनिंग है वेयर the rulers are elected. When you have rulers are not being elected, then they cannot be said democracy. But now, whether only ruling when the rulers are elected it is democracy, it is enough to be democratic? No. Even in China they have some systems of their political party members being elected. But is China a democracy? No, because there is no free and fair elections. So that is the second part. So you do not need to get think about that election mean only what we have a general election. Election can be of many types. Like people are sitting in a field and they are deciding who will be their leader. So that is like a election, one person one vote. So everybody has to say, has a say something. It should not be like only few people, only rich people are having say in the election of the rulers. So first ruler has to be elected, free and fair elections hona chahiye, and then people should also have some rights, some legal and constitutional. It should not be the same. ऐसा नहीं है कि इंडिया, यूएसए, यूके एंड चाइना दे ऑल विल हैव a same set of rights, but there has to be some rights if there is a democracy. China, you might find very few rights there. So that is bordering to dictatorship. So what is the basic difference? In dictatorship, rulers are there, you have not elected them. In democracy, you elect them. Means of election can be varied. It can be a direct type, it can be indirect type. Now, direct type is where people directly participate into decision making. Like you have in Switzerland, many cantons are there. Even in Gram Sabha in India can be said as a type of a direct democracy. In ancient India also we find evidence of a direct democracy. In ancient Greek, they were example of some people would have a large council that will be governing the city. So that was example of direct. Now most of the democracy are indirect type, where you elect the rulers and they work for you. But ultimately the power reside with the people. So that is the democracy. Now, whatever the challenges you see, that can be divided. Challenges kya hai democracy? Somewhere it is successful, somewhere it is not. Somewhere it is partially successful, somewhere it is only in the name. So foundational challenge where you do not have democracy. Somalia, China. So this is a foundational challenge. Now challenge of expansion means you have a democratic system, you have an election, whether it is reflected into the wings of the government. Like if you, even there is a democracy, suppose in Russia there are election to elect the government, but whether that democracy is seen in the working of the government, no, I don't think that is there. So that is a challenge of expansion. Now challenge of deepening is that democracy is now understood in terms of social, economic and political terms also. Normally it is understood in terms of political, but it need not to be. It has to be social, it has to be economic democracy, where access to wealth is distributed to all of the people. So that is a deepening social arena, economic arena. Then you come the challenge that India is facing. That is a challenge of deepening of the democracy. Now, the question that was once asked, democracy's superior virtue lies in the fact that it calls into the activity. Now, there are many, some of you got confused between this, that answer would be a band of dedicated party workers. Some of the mark that methods of strengthening executive leadership. So, band of dedicated party worker, that is there in China also. Methods of strengthening executive leadership, that is there also. But only one option here, intelligence and character of ordinary men and women, that fits the most exact meaning of the democracy, superior virtue. Like it trusts the ordinary men and women to have say in the election of their rulers. So that is the most superior virtue of the democracy. Now, second question, which of the following statements about the reasons for conducting election are false? Now, why do you conduct elections? Election enable people to judge the performance of government. I think that's true. Elections select the representative of their choice in an election. So I think that is also true. Normally, the most basic function में election enable people to evaluate the performance of judiciary. Now, this cannot be true because judiciary is an independent body and that is different from the democracy that we talk, executive democracy that we talk about. In the judiciary, election cannot be held to select the judges. That will be a biased thing because they will start working for those people who have chosen. Now, even people indicate policy they prefer. So that happen. Parties have their manifesto and people say, okay, now implement this, implement that. So I think C will be here the answer. That is the false. Now coming to the republic. Republic. What is republic? Now democracy we have understood. See, what one in can be explained is that when democracy is about how you elect your rulers, but republic is about where the power lie actually. So when the power lie ultimately in the people, so then it will be republic. But when the power lie in the head of the state, and our head of a state is a hereditary like Queen of England, so the power lies there either in the queen or the king. So it is not a republic. UK is not a republic, though it is a democracy. Rulers are elected, but the ultimately power is said to be in the king or the queen. But in India, it is a republic, but power is not in the hand of a hereditary person. It is in the hand of a elected person, that is the president. So this is the basic difference of monarchy and republic about where the power lie. So ancient time there was used to be a republic. Rome called themselves republic, and they did not allow any hereditary position. Similarly, in modern republics also, that is inspired from this. French Republic was there. Even it became a dictator in time of Napoleon. It called itself republic because it thought that even somebody who has become dictator, he has claimed the power on the basis of merit. There is no hereditary. The son of the Napoleon did not become the ruler again. So that is the basic difference you have to understand between democracy and republic. Now, taking a question, which of these is a provision that a democratic constitution does not have? So this is a question related to your republic. See, if you name the person that is the head of the state, you say that Elizabeth II is the head of a state in the constitution itself. It means someone or some family is a permanent person. So you cannot have a name of any person. You can have a name of the post, but not the name. Then it becomes a permanent. It becomes a hereditary, and it is not a republic. So democratic constitution cannot have the name of the head of the states. That is the. Now related to this, every country in the world is progressing slowly towards the democracy and the republicanism. Now related to it, the constitutionalism. This is an ideology that says that nobody or no institution should have the absolute power. So a constitution is a check against absolutism. How? So earlier, when you had the absolute monarchy, like medieval kingdoms or the kings and queens, so their king's words were the laws. कि जैसा हमने कह दिया वही होगा. तो इट शुड नॉट ए फ्रेंच जो किंग्स एंड किंगडम्स थे, तो इट शुड नॉट बी लाइक दे हैड एब्सोल्यूट पावर. इसको फांसी भी लटका दो, इसको कुछ कर दो, इसको कुछ कर दो. सो दैट शुड नॉट बी दैट. एवरीबडी should have certain rights. Like a constitution actually limits the power of the king or queen. That okay, you can do this, but you cannot do everything. You cannot have the absolute power because they are writing down the certain restriction, certain limitations, or certain rights of the people. So what a role constitution play? It creates a trust that okay, everybody will have their time. Those who are in opposition, they can come into power. So they have a trust on the created by the constitution. Okay, आज बीजेपी है, कल को कांग्रेस आएगी, so they can have their way. Second, it specify how government will be constitution. There will be executive, there will be judiciary, there will be legislature, and how they will interact, how legislature will make law, how executive will govern the country, who will have this power, that power. And then also the most important thing, it lays the limits of the power of government. That is constitutionalism. It's one side is, suppose this is the whole circle of power, so it limits the power of government to certain extent and give certain extent the power to the people, that okay, you will have these things rights. Like India, people have certain fundamental rights, certain constitutional rights, and also some legal rights. So at least fundamental rights that cannot be taken away, and some of them even form the basic structure, so that cannot even taken away the parliament itself. And also constitution seeks to make us to become a socialist republic, socialist democratic republic, and also want to have economic, social, and political justice. So it is sort of present the aspiration of the people, the aspiration of freedom fighters and those constitutional maker, and also that is aspiration we carry today, that okay, India should become a developed country by 2047. So that is in aspirations reflecting by creating a good society, a proper system. So constitutionalism does two important things. It limits the power of the government, give rights to the individual, and also give, give scope to the aspirations of the people. Now let's have a question here. A constitutional government is one which, now again is asking simple the definition, places effective restriction of individual liberty in the in the interest of state authority. Okay, we just discussed that a constitutional government place restriction on the authority of state in the interest of individual liberty, not otherwise. So one is definitely wrong and two will be correct here. Then again there was a question. See, the repeatedly questions have been asked on these things, and if you have not prepared from here, you cannot guess there in exam conditions. So constitutional government means, now we just discussed constitutional government has a limited power, because constitution itself limits certain power. It cannot give absolute power to any institution or any power, any individual. So a government limited by the terms of constitution is a constitutional government. Coming to the next topic, that is liberty. Now again I was discussing constitutional government that restrict the power of state and give certain powers or rights to the individual. Liberty is one of the right. Now liberty you have to understand in the concept. It is not the normal meaning that we understand in that we can do whatever we want. So that sort of meaning is not here. Liberty has a very meaning that actually is related to the much idea what human beings are born free and sort of thing. So French Revolution carried these ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Like they said, okay, human beings are born free, and they should be free from the bondages. Like they had the slavery and all kinds of regressive policy of British. So French actually abolished the policy of slavery, and they introduced the concept of liberty, that human beings should be free from the chains of social and political chains. So first, out of this concept of liberty is a concept of negative liberty that normally we understand. That is the area where you cannot interfere into the human being. That is, you cannot anytime enter into the personal space of people. You cannot have a raid going on on the homes, or you cannot arrest people on any time. So those kind of things, that is the minimum rights that anybody should have. One can speak their mind, one can express themselves. So these are the things that is called negative liberty, that is you need freedom from. So when you became independent in 1947, so we had freedom from certain things. Like we achieved freedom from the slavery, we achieved freedom from the colonialism. So we sort of achieved the negative liberty. Now the time is that we move toward the positive liberty, freedom to express ourselves, freedom to develop oneself, freedom to achieve our potential. So that is something we need enabling condition. You cannot achieve your full potential unless you have education, unless you have given creative liberty. You cannot do something, you cannot become IS unless you are allowed to study, allowed to think by yourself. So enabling material, that is economic, political, social if there are rights going on all around, so you cannot study, you cannot do anything. If there is a political crisis going on, so you cannot develop yourself. So these are the areas of positive rights, like social economic right. You should have thing to you should be able to eat, you should will have a roof on your head, you should have uh, minimum basic necessity available, then only you can be have positive liberty. So liberty, negative and positive, both has to be there. Negative liberty is the minimum condition that required, positively we are moving towards it as enabling conditions are there. Now liberty cannot be unlimited. There has to be limitations. Now there is all the dispute. So before going into the restraint part, let's solve the questions. Now, in the context of polity, which of the following would be you accept as the most appropriate definition? Now, we just discussed the minimum negative liberty is often related to the restraint, but most appropriate will be something freedom too. So here answer will be opportunity to develop oneself fully, not opportunity to do whatever one likes. So that is like absolute liberty. Nobody has the absolute liberty. That will be creative chaos in the society. Absence of restraint. So then again it has same meaning. Protection against tyranny of political leader. So that is sort of a negative liberty we are talking. The most appropriate that is working in the 21st century is like opportunity to develop oneself socially, economically, politically, freely. Now, how to decide the reasonable restrictions? So, this on this topic, like how much liberty one should have. Everybody agrees that there should be some restrictions. That has to be some reasonable restriction on our liberty, our freedom. But how we should introduce? So there was J.S. Mill, John Stuart Mill. He actually came with this classification in his book on liberty. Now there are many laws and judgment, and in each country there to how to decide what are the reasonable restrictions. But he came with a formula like, okay, you divide every action of human being in two types. Something that is self-regarding action, something you are doing that does not concern or bothers other. Now you are studying in your room, you are singing in your room, you are listening the music, so that is self-regarding action. But when you are shouting in your room, when you are watching TV at very loud volume, or we are quarreling within the room, and that is disturbing others, so something that become other regarding actions. No, other regarding action, he said, in self-regarding action there is no need to place any restriction. Now other regarding actions, something you are saying in outside the home and causing conflict between two people, something you are giving hate speech, you are saying something against Hinduism or something against Islam or something against Sikh, so that is causing problem to the minds of other people. So that is other regarding action that he said need restraint. Now what should be the restraint? Something harm principle you have to consider. Now harm principle says something that whatever the action you are doing, if cause a hurt, grievous hurt to the people, it merely irritation. If it is merely an irritation, it is not causing the actual harm, it is not leading to murder, it is not leading to rape, it is not leading to personal beating of any people, then harm is less. It should normally be admonished, it should not be people should not be punished for that. But when harm is serious, then you can put restriction on in a way that will stop the person doing something. Now somebody is discussing with the problems of within the Hinduism, within the home or within the office space or somewhere, that is not leading to any conflict. But even somebody is saying bad thing or something, so that is not causing any conflict. So it cannot, there cannot be action against the person. But if the same thing is repeated in the crowd, and then the crowd is fighting each other, that is causing harm, then it becomes a problem and you have to take action against them. So same way, there used to be a section 66A of IT Act, where you write something against something against, you express your opinion, and that is felt by the political class that it is hurtful to the sentiments of the people or to the uh, political class, then there was a provision to arrest the person. So, in rare single case, Supreme Court actually declared it null and void. No, that this is a unreasonable restriction on our liberty. So, this was one of the case where actually the judgment went into the favor of the people, and it actually was considered self-regarding actions. Now, sedition law is another law that actually is based on the harm principle, that put restriction on other regarding actions, something like hate speech. So now hate sedition law is also many times discussed that it should be abolished, it is time of Britishers, and it was used to be punish the our freedom fighters that way. So that is ongoing discussion, and see what is reasonable and not reasonable, it depends upon the context itself, that where it is leading to harm, where it is not leading to harm. So that way every action has to be weighed on these three principles, and then only it can be decided what is reasonable and not. There cannot be a universal line. Now the question is about what is the most appropriate relation between law and liberty. Now liberty has to be there has to be restrictions also. Now Indian article 19.1 that gives freedom right to speech and expression, but 19.2 puts restriction on certain grounds. So law has to be there to protect the liberty. That okay, you people have certain liberty to do certain things, but if there are no laws, so people will start quarreling each other. Something every time someone says something, it will be hurtful to someone, and there will be ultimately no liberty. So in this case, if there are no laws, there is no liberty. So that would true, but why others are wrong? Suppose if there are more laws, there is less liberty. So it cannot be said that if there are more laws, there is less liberty. It is not quantitative, it is the nature of law that will decide the liberty. If there is a liberty, laws has to be made by the people. It cannot be true. Laws has to be made by the people. That cannot be there. Law has to be just and reasonable. Put reasonable restriction, then there will be liberty. There is no need, no certainty in that. The law, if made by the people, there will be liberty. If laws are changed too often, liberty is in danger. Now that cannot be said. I also universally. Now, one of the last topic that we are going to discuss, that is the rule of law, due process of law, and procedure established. These are the three words that frequently occurs in our textbook, our polity syllabus. So everything has come from the concept of rule of law. Now there is rule of law and rule by law. So rule by law is merely presence of law and say something have to be done. But there was a political scientist A.V. Dicey in UK. He actually came with the definition of this rule of law, but he was also inspired from the Magna Carta in 13th century, where king used to have the ultimate power, all the powers. But people gathered and said, no, 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 nobody can be deprived of life, liberty, and property without notice and opportunity to defend themselves. So, king's word will not be the last word. People have to be given notice. They will have opportunity to defend themselves. So, it in a way it went against the absolutism. So, it basically introduced the constitutionalism and rule of law. So A.V. Dice, he was inspired from there, and he gave out three principles. So law has to be a supremacy of law. That is, if there has to be a rule of law, it means that there has to be a law that is above everyone. That is, nobody is outside the scope. Even if the prime minister is doing a crime, if a chota babu is doing crime, or if normal person or rich businessman is doing crime, everybody will be tried by the same IPC sections of IPC or CRPC or Indian Evidence Act. Now don't think that president is immune from the laws, and so it is not applicable. That is one exception provided by the constitution. So supremacy of law, all should be covered under the law, all should be punishable by it. Equality before the law, no one should be above the law. That is, same law can is applicable for everyone, and nobody can say that they will not respect this law. So supremacy and equality of law, these are the two major principles that has been applied in India, and you can see in the Article 14 itself, equality before law and equal protection of law, that is derived from the rule of law concept of division. Now, third point I have not discussed because it is not applicable in India. Now, in UK, it does not have a written constitution. It is based on the judicial pronouncement that has happened in the last 700 years, and that is basically the compilations of all the judicial happenings and conventions and protocols like that, and that form their constitution. So it says constitutional right are the source of judicial. Now judiciary say you have certain rights, it means you will have certain rights. So that sort of thing India is not there. Indian constitution is supreme, and it is above our Supreme Court and law and judicial decision also. That it said, okay, Indians will have these rights, and that is binding to all. So third one is not applicable in India. The supremacy of law and equality before law, it is applicable in India. Now, concept of rule of law has is become a broad concept rather than these two principles, supremacy of equality before law. That because it does not cover everything. Supremacy law is there, fine. Equality before law, it is fine. Accountability to the law, that has to be there also. If there is a RTI, then everybody has to follow it, and everybody is now responsible to the CIC, General Information Commission, that they have to give report, they have to see through the information. Nobody is beyond the scope of this. Fairness in application of the law. Law cannot be blind. It has to be fair in application. That each scenario you have to look at face perspective. Then separation of powers is there. Rule of law cannot be ensured if there is no separation power, because one person will have more than one power, then it becomes a problem. It will be too powerful. Then participation in decision making, that is obvious while you are making the law or having discussion. Legal certainty, like a law cannot be changed too often. Avoidance of arbitrariness, so there cannot be arbitrary distinction between group of people or two people or like that. Now 2G spectrum or coal licenses were cancelled on basis of this arbitrariness itself. Then procedural and legal transparency. Of course, transparency is the backbone of any good governance. So rule of law has broadened their scope, and it now includes all of these provisions. Now in India, you can see Article 13 is there. Laws in conformity of the constitution shall be there, but not in conformity shall be null and void. Now Article 14, it's say equality for law and equal protection law. Then 21 introduced due process for protection of life and liberty. Indira Gandhi a case was there. It says the rule of law is a basic part of basic structure. Even Bachchan in Singh case, it said or no arbitrariness in death penalty. So rarest of rare cases only they can be a death penalty. So coming to one questions here, which of the following is regarded as the main feature of rule of law? So the rule of law multifaceted concept. So limitation of power, that is constitutionalism. Equality before law, that is there in the rule of law said by the evidence itself. Now people's responsibility to the government, it is other way around. Government is responsible to the people, not people's responsibility to the government. So three cannot be there. Liberty and civic rights, so of course that ensure rule of law. So 1, 2 and 4. Coming to another topic that is related to rule of law is due process of law. So do not get confused between rule of law or due process of law. Rule of law is a broader concept, but due process of law is related to the idea of deprivation of life, liberty and property. How, on what grounds, what is the limit in which you can be deprived of the life or liberty or even property. So in USA, UK, there is concept of substantive due process. Like not only law is made by the proper authority, it has to be fair, it has to be reasonable also, it has to be justified also. It cannot be said that if you violate this law you will be hanged publicly, because that is not fair. You has to be, even those who violate the law, they have right to privacy. Even the criminals have their right to privacy. So it has to be fair, it has to be reasonable. Like it should not be like कि भाई थोड़ा सा चोरी कर लिया तो हाथ काट दिए. It should not be there. It has to be, punishment has to be reasonable and justified also. That he has done minor mistake, then punishment should also be minor, it should not be major punishment. So substantive due process applicable and normally in USA and other western countries is about whether law in substance is protective of life, liberty is or not, or only the limitation that it posed to the liberty is fair, reasonable and justified. But in India, traditionally we had only this procedural due process. That is, only there will be procedural rights. That okay, if law is made by parliament and it is within the domain to make the law, then it is valid. Judicial review merely check that okay, law has to be competent. So that this is one of the reason that ADM Jabalpur case habeas corpus was also suspended, because we did not have this concept till then, fair, reasonable and justified sort of thing. So only when there was Maneka Gandhi case, then Article 21 was redefined or said not only the law has to be made by the proper authority, it has to be fair, reasonable and justified. So sort of in India, from Maneka Gandhi case, we have imported the due process of law. So that is now it is in the working area. So in the procedure established by law in India is now more or less become the due process of law. And these days, whenever this question of liberty comes, suppose Aadhaar Act was there, so many people were saying that Aadhaar is intruding to the privacy of people. So it is against the liberty of the people. So whether it should be there or whether the how much restriction can be there on its in the act itself to seek the information. So whenever you are putting a restriction on the person liberty, you are trying to limit their rights, then there is now a procedure established, that is proportionality test. So whenever a court decide or judiciary is deciding this question, that because something that is interfering in our liberty, whether that law is justified. So it checks on the grounds all these parameters. Legal sanction, of course, Aadhaar Act had a legal sanction because it was passed by the parliament. Legitimate goal, yes, it has a legitimate goal because it aims to give subsidy directly to the hand of people. Uh, it ensure the identity of the people and it eliminates goals. So legitimate goal is there, proportional to the goal, whether purpose of identification, it is the goal is proportional. So act of course is to achieve that goal, so that is there also. And procedural guarantee, so Aadhaar Act ultimately had to provide that people can go to the court if their rights are violated, if their Aadhaar data is leaked or there is a misuse. So there is a procedural guarantee. If there is unfair thing happens to you, you can either complain to UADI to suspend the Aadhaar or you can go to the court. So that was provided. And also certain things like use of private player Aadhaar data, that was struck down because that went beyond these conditions. So basically, Aadhaar judgment basically used the proportionality test and it went beyond the procedure established by law. If there had been procedure established by law only, Aadhaar Act was fine, very good. But only due to that we are following the due process of law, certain restrictions were placed on the law itself, certain sections were declared null and void, and then government has to introduce the procedural guarantee. Now we have covered certain topics here and other topics are there. It's not possible to cover all the topics, but I promise you, if you fill the Google form that has shared in the description, I will share you the PDF with you immediately, and then you can go through it, and you can at least assume that at least 6 to 8 marks in prelims that can be covered by this document itself. Now, in the these are the topics that we covered while we are doing this math prelims course at Civils Daily, and the target is as usual 120 plus, where we have 44 tests along with the value addition session, that the same way we have studied. These all are covered in our classes, special classes that happens weekly by me, and there is a weekly Zoom session also, where there is a doubt clearance and anything that can be discussed. Then after the course, I go for an one-to-one mentor call to all those who will be enrolling in this. Then when the exam is there, then we'll learn the question solve. Here do thousands of questions that will solve live with all of you, so that you can understand how to approach the questions. And current affair, do not worry about that, because 2 years of current affair will be covered through the live classes. And before that, we had very good experience with this maths prelims, especially in 2022. Now normally at 1% of people qualify the UPSC prelims, but this prelims we had 70% of success rate. So out of 100 students, 70 were qualifying this prelims, and those have written the mains this year. And I am sharing you some other feedbacks, testimonials that is there, and there are multiple students that have qualified, because the whole package is designed in a way that help you to not only master the syllabus, but master how to solve the question itself. See, not attempting question, learning only the syllabus is not enough. You have to solve the questions more effectively, more accurately, and this is what a smash film is about. So it is a test based mentorship program, including a value additions and question solving, so that you do not have to worry about anything for the prelims once you come into this world. So thank you for the watching. Go through the video whole, and also try to go through the PDF that I'd be sharing with you once you fill the form. Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civils Daily.